Welcome in, everyone. I'm absolutely thrilled to have you here today. So, picture this. You've just been handed a massive project, or maybe you're spearheading a huge organizational shift. You're ready to go, but then it hits you. You don't actually have the formal power to command the people who need to do the work. If you've ever found yourself in that exact spot, well, you are in the right place. Today, we're doing a deep dive into an absolutely brilliant source text on how leaders influence without authority, and let me tell you, it completely reframes how we use our everyday language to get things done.
Okay, let's dive right into this, because I know this is a massive pain point for so many of us. Think about how a modern matrix organization works. It's like a giant puzzle, right? You might be a tech leader who desperately needs a finance partner to release funding, or an ops manager trying to convince a product leader to pivot their roadmap. You absolutely need these people, but you can't hire them, you can't fire them, and you definitely can't just order them around, no matter how much you might want to on a Tuesday afternoon. So the fundamental question we're facing is this: how do you lead when you aren't the boss?
So here's our roadmap for the explainer today. We're going to systematically break this down. 1. The myth of authority. 2. Language opens new possibilities. 3. Understand the observer's world. 4. Blueprint for influential conversations. And 5. The currency of trust.
All right, starting right off with Section 1, the myth of authority.
Let's just tackle a huge misconception right out of the gate. A lot of people kind of assume that influence is just a softer, nicer substitute for command and control power. But a title can really only compel a very limited form of compliance. People might do exactly what you say, sure, but literally nothing more. And the truth is, the most consequential work in any company rarely happens neatly inside those little boxes on the org chart. True influence generates candor and deep, shared commitment. You just can't mandate that kind of intelligent coordination. You have to build it from the ground up.
Because here's the thing. Influence is the coordination of action. It is not the exercise of position. And it's so important that we don't confuse true influence with just being super charismatic or having a really forceful presentation style. I mean, sure, a booming voice can command a room for a minute, but it doesn't guarantee that anyone is actually going to coordinate with you after the meeting ends. True influence is about making it easier for other people to understand what matters, to choose a path, to make a real commitment, and then actually deliver on it.
Which brings us to Section 2. Language opens new possibilities.
So the crucial point is exactly how do we coordinate that action? Well, the conventional view treats language as just a vehicle for reporting facts or, transmitting data. And while that's obviously necessary, it's totally incomplete for a leader. Leadership language doesn't just describe the situation, it actively changes it. The words you choose literally open and close possibilities and create an entirely new field of accountability.
If you look at the architecture of our everyday conversations, we basically use these distinct linguistic tools to get things done. When you provide hard evidence, you're making an assertion. When you judge a situation, that's an assessment. When you say, okay, we will no longer accept this, that's a declaration. You're opening or closing a possibility. A request invites someone to commit. An offer puts your contribution right on the table. And a promise? That creates an actual obligation to produce a result. Every single conversation you have relies on these building blocks.
But wow, here is where we so often get into trouble, confusing our assertions with our assessments. Say you walk into a meeting and say, the current operating model has failed. That is an assessment. It's a judgment. If you state that as an unquestionable fact, people are instantly going to get defensive. Instead, a rigorous leader grounds that assessment in assertions, actual, provable evidence. You say, service levels fell below our target in 3 of the past 4 months. By separating your facts from your interpretations, you're inviting others to inquire and collaborate with you, rather than just triggering a massive defensive battle over turf.
Moving right along to Section 3, understand the observer's world.
Now, even if your language is absolutely perfect, you're still dealing with, well, human beings. Our source provides this incredible insight. In practice, every argument lands in a mood. Think about that. People don't just receive your brilliantly crafted message exactly as you meant it. They interpret your words through the lens of their own history, their specific role, and whatever mood they happen to be in that day. You could present a flawless business case and still hit a total brick wall simply because your proposal threatens some unspoken concern they're holding on to.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how these 4 basic moods, peace, resentment, ambition, and resignation, literally dictate what people can even see or do. If a team is stuck in a mood of resignation, they're going to hear your amazing new strategy and just think, here's just another initiative that's going to fizzle out in a month. If they're feeling resentment, even a totally reasonable request feels like disrespect. Your goal here isn't to play therapist or manipulate emotions, it's to notice their mood so you can uncover the unspoken assessments driving it. If someone is resigned, pushing harder won't work. You've got to acknowledge it and ask, okay, what would need to be true for us to get a different outcome this time?
And this is exactly why you have to start with their concerns, not your brilliant solution. You know that colleague who seems incredibly territorial? Actually, scratch that label. Let's reframe it. They probably aren't trying to block you at all. They're likely just trying to protect a promise they made to a customer, or they're trying to avoid some crazy unbounded cost. Ethical influence means you have to step into their world first. Honestly, if you can't state their concerns in a way they recognize as fair, you aren't really ready to influence them yet. At that point, you're just selling.
All right, let's make this actionable. Section 4, Blueprint for Influential Conversations. So how do we actually put all this linguistic theory and human psychology into practice? It builds into this incredibly powerful meeting strategy. Step 1, frame the future. Declare why the situation is worth addressing, without pretending you already have all the answers. Step 2, make your assertions. Bring the actual data and evidence. Step 3, really listen for their underlying concerns. Step 4, create a narrative that bridges the gap between current reality and a credible future. And finally, Step 5, make a clear request. Let's zoom in on that last step for a second, because making a proper request, that is a real mechanical skill. A well-formed request isn't just vaguely tossing an idea into the room. It specifies exactly who is acting, what the action is, the deadline, the conditions of satisfaction, and the support available. But here's the most crucial part. It expects a specific response, a yes, a no, or a counteroffer. Giving your colleague the dignity and the space to say no or to negotiate is actually what creates a genuine, reliable promise.
Because if you don't do this, you run face first into this stark warning from the text. Ambiguous requests create ambiguous commitments and later disappointments. Vague clarity is the absolute enemy here. It's the root cause of endless rework and passive resistance. If you walk out of a meeting with just a bunch of vague head nods, I promise you haven't influenced anyone. You've just guaranteed that you're going to have another meeting about the exact same thing next week.
Which leads us to our final piece of the puzzle. Section 5, the currency of trust. Look, absolutely none of these conversational blueprints are going to work without a solid foundation. When you don't have a formal title to fall back on, your influence is quite literally an assessment being made by other people. They are constantly watching and judging. Do you understand what matters to them? Are you going to follow through? Will you be honest when the trade-offs get painful? Because of this constant evaluation, influence takes a very long time to build. But man, it is remarkably quick to lose. The source material breaks this trust down into 3 core pillars.
The first of these pillars is sincerity. Simply put, this is the assessment that what you're saying out loud perfectly aligns with what you're thinking privately. It means your stated reasons aren't just a smokescreen for some hidden agenda. If you ask a team for collaboration, but you've already made the decision and you're just putting them through a bunch of corporate theater, yeah, your sincerity drops to 0 immediately, and your influence goes right out the window with it.
The second pillar is competence. Do people believe you can actually pull off what you're proposing? And ironically enough, looking someone in the eye and saying, I honestly do not know yet, but here is exactly how we're going to find out, often builds way more credibility than faking absolute certainty. It is totally fine to not have all the answers. Just be transparent about the limits of your expertise.
And our third pillar is reliability. Doing exactly what you said you'd do when you said you'd do it under the agreed upon conditions. It sounds basic, right? But it's absolutely crucial. Reliability fundamentally lowers the cost of working with you. Think about it. When someone constantly misses commitments, what happens? You have to chase them down, you have to micromanage, you have to set up extra checkpoints, the cost of coordination skyrockets, and as a result, their influence just completely plummets.
Now, because language is such a wildly powerful tool in shaping how people act, the source lays out some very clear ethical boundaries. Ethical influence flat out refuses to manufacture fake urgency just to panic people into agreeing with you. It refuses to hide the ugly trade-offs or exploit people's insecurities. And importantly, it refuses to just slap the label resistant on a stakeholder before actually taking the time to understand the totally valid concerns they might be protecting. We're using language to respect people, not to manipulate them.
So what does this all mean for us? Influence isn't this exhausting struggle to force compliance out of people. It's really the capacity to help others see that a better future is worth creating and that it's entirely possible to build it together. By mastering these linguistic tools, your assertions, your requests, your commitments, and by building a rock-solid reputation for sincerity, competence, and reliability, you can absolutely lead from anywhere in the organization. So I want to leave you with this thought. What better future will you make sayable and doable today? Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive.
Go out and try putting these tools into practice in your very next conversation.